Great. Thank you all so much for attending. Once again, we can't do this without you. This is a Visualize webinar on the render queue. So we're just going to explore some creative ideas on the render queue, talk about the different options in the render queue, and just, I guess, like, if you haven't been using it, these are the reasons why you should use it. So that'll be our goal for today. I envision that taking about 15 or 20 minutes. Then we'll open it up for about 10 minutes of questions. So my name's Adam Hughes. I'm an application engineer with GoEngineer. I've been doing this for a couple years now. Totally enjoy this. This, especially Visualize, is just a lot of fun. I'm also an adjunct professor at USC, and I enjoy that too. I actually teach my students this software so they can make not only like rapid prototypes on 3D printers, but they can also create really awesome renders of their products before they're even made. So it's pretty fun. Here we're going to explore something really simple, right? This was a custom yo-yo design that I did for a local yo-yoer, right? His name's Yo-Yo Brad, but I thought we'd do something simple, and that's just because, like, the render queue itself is relatively simple. So let's just have some creative fun and throw some different options in as far as rendering goes, right? So the render queue is actually available in the Visualize Pro software. So you'll have to have Visualize Professional in order to use it. So if you're in Standard, I guess there's the painstaking thing with Standard is, you're able to color everything and make it look really cool. And then you have to go to the render tool and then, select the render method. Let's see, we'll go ahead and change it to a standard render. Modify your resolution, modify your render passes, and then you click Start Render, right? And the only downside of this is you're kind of waiting for paint to dry at this point in time, and you don't know if you've done something wrong until you wait for the render to go, and either you do or don't like your render, and so maybe you come through and make a couple tweaks and you make some changes. Then you go ahead and click Start Render again. You wait for the paint to dry, you wait for the render to run, and then you get to see it, and then you kind of rinse and repeat, right? So it's rinse and repeat. What you don't have is this Cinder render queue option, right? So this allows me to take the work that I've done, take the work that I've done and send it to the queue. And so the queue will pop up. It's actually found under View, and you can turn on queue over here. And what it does is it stores this configuration of your render as a item to be rendered just at some later time, like maybe when you go get a coffee break or a lunch break, or you're done for the end of the day. And you can see I've done a whole bunch of different renders over the past couple months, I suppose. And of course I can reorder them. So I could shift them up or shift them down, but essentially this order here is telling me which one has priority over others. So if I wanted to shift this yo-yo that I'm doing up, right, I could drag it. I could essentially just keep clicking. I have too many in here probably, but you get the idea. You can just reorder things and keep moving up, keep moving it down, prioritize your renders so that, the first ones or the most prevalent ones render first. So let's talk about how to use the render queue for a second, rather than just, it's pretty straightforward, right? You stick something in here, and then you can edit it. Of course, you can look at the settings that you've specified for it, and then you can reorder, and that's relatively straightforward, right? But let's concentrate more on the creative side and less on the picks and click side here. So maybe there's an instance where I want, this yo-yo might have 15 or 16 different configurations with different colors or different lettering, different background, and I'm just not sure what's going to look good. Now, one of the things I learned working at Lazy Boy is never go in to a corporate meeting with one solution, right? Because you're going to get drilled for all the other things that people are thinking about. So go in there with a whole bunch and be like, hey, even though this is the best solution, these are all the other things I thought about. And same thing with renders. Hey, I think this one looks the best, but here's all the other renders I got to play around with. So what this allows you to do is to kind of get really creative and exercise some funkiness or creativeness or, whatever avenue you want to run down, right? So if we go to our libraries and, we go ahead and select, I don't know, maybe we can make this out of metal. We can do like a blue anodize, right? And then like, okay, that looks pretty cool. I don't like the way this sort of component works. So maybe we'll throw something else on there, like some sort of heat treated component. And then we can go back to our render option and then send a queue. And then maybe this blue is slightly off shade, right? So I'll go back to my appearances and be like, you know what? That could be a deeper, darker blue. So let's just go ahead and do that now. I'm like, okay, that looks better, right? And then you can send a queue. And then maybe you don't like blue at all. You want to go back to the clear, but you want to add a tint to it, right? So we'll go ahead and make this polycarbonate again. But the polycarb needs to have a little like red wine kind of look to it, right? So it's like, all right, cool. I kind of like that. Send a queue. So now you have all these different variations of just maybe colors or, you know, material options for either your marketing department or your customers or your pre-order department to start collecting some pre-orders. Then we can go through and make a couple different configurations of this. So right thus far, we've only been creating standard renders. So let's explore the configuration option. So again, this is also a pro function, right? But here I can add a configuration, and then we're going to call this red. We'll add another configuration and call this blue. And then we'll do a green one. Why not? Okay, so I have the green active. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this polycarb that I've created with a red hue, copy it, and paste it. And on this new applied material, I'm just going to go ahead and change it to a green color. And then drag and drop it on, and now that's green. I'm going to cycle to the blue. Again, copy and paste that appearance. Cycle it to something bluer. Oops. By the way, I can totally steal stuff for colors. So if you're looking to match colors exactly, you can hit this little color picker icon, and you click and drag it. And I'm going to steal, I could steal this blue, this pixel blue, I suppose, but I'm going to grab my Zoom meeting color. So you can see that's my start Zoom meeting icon on another screen. So here I'm actually stealing that blue and then making this the Zoom blue, and I can drag and drop this on, right, which is kind of cool. So now we have red, blue, green, and I want to go back to my white. So under my base configuration, I'll go ahead and shift this back over to my white kind of transparent feel. And now I've created 3 configurations, red. Oh, just kidding. I needed to copy that one. I goofed, right? I needed to make another material for red. So we have our clear, red, blue, and green. And just like you would normally click Start Render, right, we can send to render queue. Now I'm going to show you what all these look like right now, right? So we have the couple that we've added. We have the anodized one. We have the blue one that we've created. And it's showing you with these icons, hey, this is a single frame view, and it's going to be run on this computer. And then here's my yo-yo, which is the red. Oh, I forgot to pick all configurations. We'll fix that right now. So instead of doing a local standard render, we'll do an all configurations render, and then send this to the queue. And then we should be able to see that queue option pop up as soon as it loads. There it is. And so now this one has a different icon telling you it's all configurations. Of course, we can try this again with like a panorama, send a queue, and then we'll do all cameras, send a queue, and interactive, send a queue. And so each one of those is going to pop in with different icons, going to tell you, hey, here's what we're rendering, and here's what we're expecting to render. Here's an all camera render, interactive render, and then they're all lined up. So now once you got all of the different renders that you want to start for the day, you click Start Render. And that's as simple as it gets, right? I mean, this is the basic. I mean, this is what makes the render queue so powerful, right? Is that it's such a basic add-on when you jump into Pro, but it really increases your productivity a whole bunch. We have a question real quick. Someone says interactive render. What is that? An interactive render, we have a really good picture on our website actually of that. So let's go to GoEngineer.com. An interactive render is like a 360 render that allows the customer or whoever's on your website the capability to click and interact with your picture. Essentially creates a sphere of pictures, right? And then you can drag and zoom out and zoom in. So here's a guitar, but see, I can click and kind of move it around. I can zoom in, look at all the different components and decide, if this is something I want to purchase. That function is also unlocked in Visualize Pro. This render, what we're looking at right here on the page, is probably close to about 400 images. And so this is an image, and that's 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 an image. And as I move around, I'm just activating different images seamlessly. And yeah, you're able to view something like as if it was in 3D, but it's completely rendered. So there's your interactive images options. But we're not quite done yet because we haven't explored everything, right, with the render queue. Yeah, there is AR and VR options for Visualize. So the question is, can interactive images be used in AR, VR? And there are some really good examples on YouTube. Let me see if I can find one real quick. SOLIDWORKS published some really good ones. I personally don't have the GPU power just yet. I'm testing out some GPUs, and I have a Quadro P4000 in or a Quadro RTX 4000, and I gotta say I'm like super impressed for the money, how well it's doing. SOLIDWORKS. Let me see if I can find this one for you real quick. It's definitely worth showing. I should have it on deck. I apologize for not having it on deck. Here it is. Okay, so this is a visualized render from SOLIDWORKS, but like you can click around and move. And this is a good example of a panorama and the sun setting, right? And so you're looking inside of a cockpit. There's also Brian Hillner has some really good videos. Let's see if I can steal one more. There's another one where this is a 3D VR and then animation is 360. So this is kind of interesting. So while the animation is occurring, right, you can look around. And if you imagine you had a VR headset on, right, you'd just be looking, into the VR and turning your head, and then you could look, kind of warp to different locations. So that's a really good question. I wanted to answer that real quick. So getting back to the webinar topic of utilizing the render queue, it's all about creativity here, right? And so rapid creativity. So if I can go to my scenes, I can select like a new backdrop and say, well, you know what, I'm really not sure about this backdrop. Let's go ahead and do a soft backdrop here, and then send it to render queue. And then let's go ahead and do a dark backdrop because I'm not really sure what's going to look better. Right, so you can throw a dark backdrop in there and then send it to queue. And the idea is you're just kind of flexing your creativity, adding new environments or new scenes. If I go to my library, I can select my environments, do like an auto photo studio, change the lighting, send to queue, and then maybe try something else like low key. It's going to be really soft lighting. And then send to queue. We can do like a warehouse even if we wanted. If we wanted to be like in an actual location. You see the lighting on the warehouse looks kind of cool. Send to queue. Maybe I don't use a backplate at all, right? And I just make the warehouse a flat color instead of using the environment. Make it like a soft gray. Send to queue. But the idea here is that when you're done, and I hope I'm painting this picture correctly, is that when you're done, you don't just have, like one subset of yo-yos. You don't just have one subset of the model you're trying to render. You have, 30 or 40 or 50 different options for your marketing department to select the best one for the website, or your boss or your team or whoever it is, right? So it's like you can present your whole team with these 30 or 40 different options, decide on the best 3, and then go perfect those in Visualize, create more render queues of those, right? And then now have these really super stellar images without having to wait for the paint to dry every time. Because each one of these, if I wanted to see the result of each one of these, I'd have to wait like 5 minutes maybe sometimes, depending on how much GPU power you have. Sometimes even longer if you're running an older GPU, right? So the idea of using the render queue to really flex your creativity and explore a whole bunch of different options for you and your team and your marketing team or anyone downstream using it is really the goal. And I really feel like a lot of the times this is underutilized because we're just like a little complacent maybe with how that one render turned out, and you spent a lot of time doing this one render and making it look good. But the goal here is for just a little bit of extra effort, you can create 30 or 40 or 50 or however many different other options you want with just cycling through different environments, different backplates, different textures, different colors, different configurations, different render output modes, adding or subtracting lights, adding or subtracting different cameras, all kinds of stuff. We have another question. This is somewhat unrelated, but is there a rule of thumb for the number of total passes on, or some relationship to the resolution on the image size? Is there a point where it's no longer changing anything? Yeah, that's a good question, Wesley. Thank you for asking that. So, there is some general options here. So if I click this over to fast, I think I have my fast set at 5,000. That's pretty high for a model like this. But let's talk about some generals. So if you are running Visualize, right? And I want to check something real quick. I want to see if I can turn this on with this GPU. I'm looking for initialized denoiser. Sweet. I'm going to turn this on. Okay. So if you have more than 4 gigs of RAM on your GPU, you can turn on denoiser. And so what this does, I'm going to kind of rotate this thing to reset it. But when denoiser turns on, what it does is after about 100 passes, it takes the pixels and blends them from left to right, up and down, to get the image to solve faster. Both NVIDIA and AMD have this solution. They're different names. They're different engines in the background, but they both work about the same. So if you're running either card, you can turn this on so long as you have 3 gigs of VRAM. Obviously, the heavier the file you're using, the more VRAM you need. So with denoiser turned on, I'd probably say I can get away with about 1,000 passes, generally speaking, on all standard 2D image renders. With something that's more complicated, like a panorama or a VR, I might bump that up to like 1,500. If you have stuff with a lot of bloom or lighting in it, you might take that up to about 3,000. And then if you're rendering anything that's inside of a room, so you have like a room mocked up and you have some lighting, and the light is bouncing between all the walls, and there's just a lot of light traces, a lot of ray traces to calculate. 5,000 is probably good for that, but I would reserve that for more of an advanced render. Another way you can figure this out too, Wesley, anyone else watching, is at some point in time, you could just run a visual test. So you're looking at this model, I got some ugly stuff going on here, I got some ugly stuff going on here, there's something here that's not quite right, and it's at 200 passes. So at 200 passes, I'm not completely satisfied. At 300, is it getting better? Marginally, like this area up here looks a little bit better. And then they kind of just scanning with your eyes and figuring out what you do and don't like. And then you're kind of at 750 passes, and you're like, okay, this is blending really nice. These lines are really straight. Now you're at like 1,000 passes, and you're kind of just mental noting, hey, this is, I don't see any imperfections. And then you can let it sit till like 15 or 2,000 and see if it gets any better. And if it doesn't, then like 1,000 is your marker, right? And if you need more time, then maybe 2,000 is your marker, and so on, right? So that's how you can quickly get a metric, because every file is going to be a little bit different. There's no just like one number you need to hit every time. But that's how you can visually kind of satisfy the look, right, versus the render pass count. One last option here while we're talking about that, because I think it's a good question. It's worth diving into a little bit deeper. Is you have an option to set your render pass count to stop, right? So when I'm in fast mode, my pass count stops at 100. When I'm in accurate mode, my fast up counts at 5,000. I can switch this to 3,000, or let's just do, 1,500, because maybe my GPU isn't as good. Then when I redo this render here, we'll let that change go into effect. You can see that as soon as it hits 1,500, it's going to tap out and stop rendering. This just avoids your computer from using your GPU for no reason, while maybe you step away accidentally getting up to like 30,000 pass count or something, something ridiculous. So yeah, that's a good tool to help limit, how much power I suppose you're drawing. Or keep your GPU fresh, or keep it from overheating. Good question. Okay, so to wrap up this micro session on the render queue, some of the key things that we're talking about, right? We can turn on the render queue if you have Visualize Pro. The render queue pops up in your task pane, so you'll have to go click it. It doesn't just pop up automatically, unfortunately. You have to go click on it in your task pane, and it'll show it. Once you have it loaded up here, you can reorganize all your views. You can see what different options you have rendered as. You can edit these options. You can increase the render quality. So you could run one at 500, view the results, and then figure out that, hey, it's not what I want, and then come back down to this next one and say, oh, let's bump it up to 1,000. Change the resolution and all that good stuff. Reorder, and then look at the details of what you're actually running when it was submitted, and so on. And then, of course, you could delete stuff here, too. That's about it for the local render queue. The only other option for this is to do remote jobs. And so remote jobs are where, we're not going to dive into that completely, but you can set up a Visualize Boost, right? So I'll just open up what Boost looks like. Boost also comes free with SOLIDWORKS Visualize Professional. Where'd you go? There we are. This is what Boost looks like. This allows you to ping another computer on your network. I don't have any other computers, unfortunately. I could actually boost to this machine that I'm streaming off of, but that would be highly counterproductive. But you can set up like a render box for your entire team to use. So if you have like 3 or 4 people using Visualize, instead of spending maybe like, $2,000 per computer for a really nice graphics card, you can just build a computer, put it like in the server room, and then put 1 or 2 graphics cards in there that are really good, and have the entire team ping that one box for rendering. And then you could say, no, I want to do remote jobs, and I want to send these jobs to this computer. That way I can still continue to work on my computer, or multitask, right? Run 2 renders at the same time. And this is all done through the render queue as well. So the render queue is highly functional. Okay, so that's going to wrap us up for the render queue option here in Visualize. This is Adam Hughes for GoEngineer. Thanks for watching.